Ooh, that looks tasty.
Folks, today the Hungry Gamer is back with another game review, and today we're talking about Gnome Hollow, with art and design by Ammon Anderson, with additional art by Patrick Spaziante, and published by The Op. Or maybe it's the OP. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be, but that's who publishes this game. And I do apologize if I mispronounce any of those names. Now before I get started, I do need to point out that I am somewhat buddies with the designer of this game. We met a few years ago before this game was the deal that it is, and I do consider him a friend, so take that for what you will when you are considering my opinion on this video. Additionally, thank you to the Op for providing me with this copy of the game so I can create this video. Finally, please make sure you turn your Klingon subtitles, because if I make any mistakes in the rules overview, that is where you will find those corrections. Now, with that said, what this game is this is a game about creating little paths that are going to be tended to by gnomes. And these gnomes are going to be harvesting mushrooms along these paths and then using those mushrooms at the market to buy fun stuff for them. And by fun stuff for them, we are talking about bottle caps and buttons and things like that. And you'll be getting points that way. And you're trying to make circles of these white mushrooms, and that will allow you to unlock things on your board. Additionally, I'll point out there are two sides of this board. You can play with this side here, or you can play with the slightly more advanced side here. And I'll briefly explain this later on, but just understand that this is the base side, and yes, those are magnetic. And to do this, you are going to be doing a tile laying game, and it's got a little bit of, I'm going to call it worker placement, but that's a little bit of a misnomer. In any event, if you are not interested in how this game is played, so I'll jump into my final thoughts, then you would go to the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us still here, let's talk about how this game is played. On your turn, what you're going to do is you're going to place two tiles from the board here out onto the larger board that everyone is playing on. And you're allowed to place two tiles plus any tiles that you may have in reserve. So just for sake of argument, I will grab this one here. And what you can see is that there are these white paths, and that is what you are actually trying to connect. So I'll make it a little easier for myself, and I will start with this here. And so you will see that I've connected that path like so. And then I'll take a second one, and I will play that one right there. And so you can see I have a 3-tile circle that I'm working on. Then after I place my two tiles, I would then resolve. Now I'm going to go ahead and just grab another tile so I can show you what that means. Which would be, if I had this one right here, I could then resolve this. And now that we have a circle, I would then place the mushrooms in the circle of the type around it, which would be a pink, a yellow, and a blue. Now, that's what resolving means. Now, it's important to note that you're not going to be able to do this most likely on the first turn. So I'm going to rewind a little bit to before I did that resolve action and skip ahead to take a gnome action. And to do that, you're going to move a gnome. And you can place a gnome on a path to claim that circle as yours. Other players are not allowed to build on it without your permission, and essentially you have first rights to all the mushrooms there. So let's just say the first turn I placed that, moved my gnome there, then my next turn I placed this here. Now again, it's still these same 3 mushrooms, but now I would get those mushrooms because I have my gnome on that path. And what I do with those, I'll talk about in just a moment. Then I would look at how many tiles were involved in this circle. So we have 1, 2, 3, and then the big tile, no matter how many times you happen to cross it, counts as 1. So that is a 4-tile circle. So I would take my first token here and put it right over here onto the 4, which in this case did nothing. However, if it was a little bit of bigger tile, say like this, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and would result in my getting 2 purple mushrooms, 1 yellow, 1 pink, and 1 red, again assuming I had claimed that, then I would be able to place it on one of these spaces over here. And what you'll see here is all of these have different bonuses that you're able to get. So up at the top, we have these signposts. And signposts, if you take one of those, you can place it on a circle and immediately take the action. In this case, allowing me to place another tile, or perhaps something like this, which would give me more mushrooms. I will also point out that later on in the game, if there is a signpost already there in a circle, you can always move a gnome to that circle and claim that action. I could take a tile. If we're over here, I can get extra mushrooms, I can get flowers, and I'll talk about flowers in just a minute, and so on. Now, the other thing that you can do with your gnome action is you can move it to the pinwheel market and you can sell your mushroom. And that is up here. As you'll see, there's different colors of mushrooms and how many they want in the sale. So let's just say I had 5 pink mushrooms. Well, I could go there, I could sell these 5. I would grab one of these little tokens here, I'd find 5, put it right there, and I would gain those 7 points. In this case, a little crystal and a button. And then I could make one more sale if I wanted. It's important to note that when you make your 2 sales of mushrooms at the pinwheel market, it has to be 2 different kinds of mushrooms. So I couldn't, if I had, say, 12 pink mushrooms, I couldn't do a 7 and then a 5. Now the last thing that I want to point out are these flower symbols here. So when you place your 2nd, 4th, and 6th tile, you are able to claim one of these flower tiles. And what they're going to do is they're going to act as a wild space for you. So I could put that right here and you'll see I still complete my circle and everything can connect to it. Also, what will come with that is one of these flowers. And then I'm able to place that on my own player board like so. And for all the different color flowers that I have at the end of the game, I will get however many points are below it. So if the game ended here, I would gain 1 point. If I say also had this one here, when the game ended, I would get 3 points. And that'll bring back to this flower symbol over here. As you're going through, anytime you get that, you can claim a flower that is available in the market. And flowers that are available in the market will be any flower that someone has claimed one of these tiles for. When you claim the tile, you also get the flower, and then all the extras go into the market. And that's how this game works. You're going to keep playing through until either all the tiles have been played, or someone has all of their flowers here, and then everyone will get equal turns, and that's how the game will end. And then at the end, you simply count up whoever has the most points, and most points wins. Now, I also said I would talk about this other side of the board. And everything about this board operates exactly the same, except you have a lot more rules to how you are trying to make your mushroom rings. And here, it's showing you exactly the shapes of tiles and exactly the shapes of mushrooms that you are trying to do. Ostensibly, this is a much more challenging way to play the game, and it's significantly harder to actually accomplish all these different shapes. However, I will point out that there are far more of these spaces than there are up here, so it's not as if you have to do all of these to win the game. But really, that's the core of how this game is played. So what do I like about this game? The first thing is it's completely adorable. The little gnomes and the mushroom paths, and it's just the little signposts, all of it just is as cute as it can possibly be. And so obviously, that has to lead this. Second, I'll say the production itself, even in the retail version, that's all retail, but just in the regular version you can buy, has some really nice bits to it. The magnetic boards are they're just cool. Are they necessary? I don't know. They probably could have gotten away with a double layer board and have no problem there, or probably just have it just kind of sit on there, but it has the magnetic boards, and they're just really cool. It's got those nice signpost pieces, and you can also buy upgraded bits, so you have kind of chunky wood bits for everything. So it's a really, really nice production. And because of all of that, it looks really good on the table when the game is over. You have this lovely, beautiful little gnome garden as little critters running around, and they've traded their mushrooms for buttons and bottle caps, and it's just very, very cute. The whole thing, the whole presentation looks wonderful. Now, talking about the gameplay itself. So at the core, it's a tile laying game. There's lots of tile laying games out there. And the tile laying itself is good. It's good tile laying. You have the different paths going different directions, and that you're able to kind of flip them over and they're mirrored, and you get these really interesting shapes that you're making, and great. However, it's things like the signposts, I think, that really make it particularly interesting. These little signposts that you get to put out there, and the way you get to choose all of your kind of bonuses when you make
the different shape of mushroom rings is very interesting. I really, really like the signpost, though. You put them out there, you get a bonus, and then you can keep going back and getting things as you're going through the game. So it makes you have to think about what it is you're going to put out there, because other people are going to get to go and use it as well. And so I really, really like the way the signposts work in this game. I think the mushroom market itself is pretty interesting in the sense that, yes, it's just contract fulfillment, but when you combine it with the way that you have to build certain types of mushroom rings, and certain types of mushroom colors are only going to appear on the tiles that they appear on, so you have this interesting balance of trying to build rings that have these types of mushrooms, but you have to move your gnomes around the board to either hold on to a ring and kind of save it for yourself so no one else can take it from you, or move it to the market. And what that does is it means if you have a bunch of mushrooms, you can't go to the market more than twice because you have to move a gnome to a place. And so it has this little bit of scarcity as far as the actions that you can take when you get into the late game. And I think that keeps this game more interesting than if you didn't have the requirement to kind of move the gnomes around and have the puzzle of trying to figure out how to get the mushrooms that you want. And the last thing I'll say is I think that the double-sided board is very interesting. The second side is far more challenging, and in many ways I think far more interesting, and I love that those two options are there. I never actually tried having a better player play the harder side and the beginner player play the other side, but I can't imagine that that's not something that you could do as a bit of a handicap that you could put into the game. So what are my quibbles with the game? The first one is the flower market. I understand that you get these kind of bonus tiles, and they're wild tiles, and those are great that you have those. Sometimes you just have to have them, and I love those tiles. But the flower market itself is worth a lot of points, and it just feels a little bit like an action tax, because if I want to get that flower, for the most part, I have to just send my gnome to the flower market. And that's not as satisfying when you compare it to going to the signpost and holding on to this ring for yourself and selling mushrooms. It just isn't as satisfying, but it's very necessary because a lot of points that you're going to be able to get there with those flowers and in the flower market. The next thing I'll say is, in the early game, there's not a lot to do with your gnomes. Like, you put them out there and you hold on to that first ring that you are starting to build, and then maybe you send one out to hold on to a second ring, and if you didn't make some kind of small ring, then they're just kind of sitting there. And so in the early game, it can be a little bit of a bummer that you're not moving your gnomes around anywhere. And the last thing I'll say is, I already mentioned that I really like that it has that second side of the board. That said, that second side of the board is hard. It is very hard to get those exact shapes. And it may be frustrating because the difference in difficulty, I think, between the regular side and the other side is vast. So it's not any kind of gentle ramp up. It's either you're going to play the nice, cozy, simple game, or you're going to play the hard game, which is challenging. And maybe that's not what you're looking for. But there you have it, folks. That is Gnome Hollow. If I made any mistakes in the rules overview, please let me know in the comments with the timestamp so I can get that into the Klingon subtitles. As I mentioned at the beginning, I am buddies with the designer, Ammon, and because of that, I may be being too harsh on this game to try to maintain my objectivity, or maybe I'm being too nice. It's always hard when I actually really like a designer, because I also want to make sure that I'm being as objective as possible. So do keep that in mind with the kind things I said and with the quibbles that I gave. But as I said, that is Gnome Hollow. I think this is a fun tile layer. I think it's beautiful to look at. And I think it's kind of one of those games that you kind of have to decide, well, what are you looking for in your gorgeous little game, right? Are you really just looking for just tile laying and that's all you care about? Well, then I might say, hey, go check out Land vs. Sea. It's beautiful and it's just tile laying. But this one has a little bit of market thing going on. You're messing with the market and you're getting these signposts and that's kind of what you're doing. So that's a little bit of a different thing. So if you're interested in that market and the tile laying, well, then you come to Gnome Hollow. But maybe if you just are kind of interested in the contract fulfillment, well, then maybe you go over to Flamecraft, which is going to be worker placement and the market. So it falls into what I think is a very good pool of games that I just mentioned. All those other two games both made my Game of the Year lists at the end of the year, the years that they came out. And so I think being in that pool is a great place to be, but it's kind of one of those things where you have to decide what exactly do I want in my super adorable, cute game. And in this one, you're potentially getting some challenging tile laying when it comes to making those paths, and you're getting contract fulfillment. So if that is the niche you're looking for, then this is a wonderful, wonderful option. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe become a channel member. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.